It has resulted from the activities of 4 government agencies and an act of Congress. The act of Congress was the Community Reinvestment Act, which made it incumbent upon local banks to provide affordable housing to would-be homeowners in their communities. The Federal Housing Authority promoted a similar agenda. Then, adding much fuel to the fire were the 2 government-supported agencies, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and their congressional mentor, especially Barney Frank. These several government agencies and programs promoted an authentic housing bubble with their subsidized low interest rate loans and 0 down payments for mortgages. The result was a boom in real home and real property purchases that could not be sustained. The Fed couldn't do anything real, but these agencies, especially Barney Frank, did something real. They had the housing market overbought, and a lot of other construction as well. There were several things that aggravated this situation, which I won't go into. But the point is, the bubble was politically inspired from the beginning. It was urged as a measure to foster the American dream of home ownership. What we now have in place of that dream is a huge market disequilibrium, a nightmare, in the housing and financial sectors that extends into many other areas of the economy as well. As reported in New York Times recently, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac took over a foreclosed home roughly every 90 seconds during the first 3 months of this year. By 1st of June, they owned 163,000 plus houses. No, at the end of March, they owned 163,000 houses, a virtual city with more homes than Seattle, Washington. The mortgage finance companies created by Congress to help Americans buy homes have become 2 of the nation's largest landlords. Now, the Times then didn't even slap their wrists, but they should have said, we've got to get rid of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. They didn't do it. That's the New York Times. More recently, the two agencies had to take themselves off the New York Stock Exchange because their share prices fell below $1 a share. It is clear they could not exist without Barney Frank and the huge governmental subsidies he engineers in Congress to support them. Meanwhile, the Federal Reserve, the Treasury Department, and Barney Frank have kept all the destabilizing elements in place. The Fed, under Bernanke, has pumped huge quantities of new money, bank reserves, into the banking system. The Treasury has redistributed government fiscal tax revenues toward large financial conglomerates under both Paulson and Geithner. And the 2 FMs have survived congressional criticisms unscathed thanks to Barney Frank. All the machinations of these institutions are keeping the economic environment unstable so that equilibrium is delayed and warped. Every time a bailout or a stimulus bill passes, the stock market takes another hit. I don't know whether you noticed it, but the correlation was not only logical, it was obvious. Taxpayers know when they are being built to pay for institutions that are too big to fail. Rather, these firms are too big to succeed. They reflect diseconomies of scale and must recapitalize with lower dollar values or go out of existence and allow their resources to be economized by new or surviving firms. Markets must be allowed to function. They are the least visible and also the most democratic of institutions. They are millions of people and thousands of firms and industries making billions of self-interested decisions every few minutes. They are telling the world that capital values, particularly, including a lot of houses and industrial buildings, and some human capital, such as auto workers' benefits and wages, are too high for full utilization of those resources. They are insisting that some firms, some homeowners, some workers, and the mortgage financial institutions that have rolled the dice and lost to take their lumps and recapitalize at lower values. Every agency in D.C., that's Washington, D.C., however, is expending every effort to prevent such an adjustment. Unlike the Great Contraction of 1929, the Great Recession of 2008 and later features no shortage of money. The Fed has loaded up the banking system, has kept those reserves dormant by paying interest on them. It pays, by the way, 1/4 of 1% on the reserves that banks hold as a part of their checking accounts with the Fed bank. That is, it's just like a commercial bank giving us, who have a checking account with them, 1/4 of 1% on our balance. That doesn't sound like much, but it prevents, that is, it keeps the banks from expanding those reserves. They don't have any great demand for them right now anyway. And so the reserves stay dormant. However, once recovery begins and commercial banks begin expanding their credit facility, the Fed is going to face two unattractive alternatives. If they sell their junk securities that they've acquired over the past few years in the open market to prevent the monetization of the excess reserves, market interest rates are going to rise to politically unacceptable levels. Otherwise, the Fed must allow the banks to keep and expand their excess reserves and thereby preside over what will surely be a severe market inflation. Such a policy will also result in higher nominal rates, interest rates anyway, as the market system builds the inflation rate into the interest rate structure. You recall in 1980, the Fed controlled interest rates, very short-term interest rates, overnight loans that banks made, right up to 22%. And then by controlling the quantity of money, that inflation was broken and things got back more or less to normal in the 1980s. When such an inflation is ongoing, uncertainties multiply. No one knows what real values are or what they should be. Inflating its way out is the big government way. Although it will eventually allow a new equilibrium, it exacts a terrible toll on people's lives and fortunes and anticipations. So what would Milton Friedman have advised the government to do about the current crisis? First, he surely would have emphasized that the central bank do the only thing it can do, stabilize growth in the money stock, the price level, and the value of the dollar, and let capital markets and other markets readjust. Do not let money be the problem, as he often said. Monetary policy can provide nothing more than a stable monetary environment within which any real activity may proceed. He would have agreed that the real people who live in the real world of markets will unwittingly and spontaneously develop a new equilibrium. As he put it in Capitalism and Freedom, which was published in 1962, government programs substitute the values of outsiders for the values of participants. Either some telling others what is good for them, or the government taking from some to benefit others. These measures are therefore countered by one of the strongest and most creative forces known to man, the attempt by millions of individuals to promote their own interests, to live their lives by their own values. This incentive is the major reason why the interventionist measures of government have so often had the opposite of the effects intended. It is also one of the major strengths of a free society and explains why governmental regulations does not strangle it. I'm not Milton Friedman, but I emphatically say the same thing. Let markets work. They maximize motives, morals, and real product. Thank you.